Biden has utterly humiliated our nation on the world stage. Putin is not only threatening Ukraine, I don't know if you've been reading about this, but now he's threatening to go into Cuba and Venezuela. That's a lack of respect, and we never had that problem, did we? There was no problem with Putin and Ukraine. There was no problem with President Xi in Taiwan. China, Russia, and Iran are engaging in aggression and provocations they never would have dared do just 1 year ago. They would never have done any of this. They're toying with us. They're toying with us. That's exactly what's happening. And our woke military leaders, these are not people that are respected by Russia and China and North Korea, Kim Jong-un. He's starting to shoot missiles again. Do you notice? He's starting to shoot the missiles. And look at all the press back there.
With US-Russian relations the most tense they've been since the end of the Cold War. Talks to try and defuse a crisis. America and Russia's deputy chief diplomats, their frosty body language not encouraging, and failing to make progress on the issue of Ukraine joining NATO. Russia's deputy foreign minister has compared this crisis to the Cuban missile standoff, which took the world to the brink of nuclear war. After the talks, he wasn't sounding compromising.
We need ironclad, waterproof, bulletproof, legally binding guarantees, not assurances, not safeguards, guarantees with all the words shall, must, everything that should be put in this bowl, never ever becoming member of NATO.
Can I put to you the words of the Ukraine ambassador this morning on Sky News, who said that many dead Russian bodies will be returned to Moscow if Putin moves against his country? Does that worry you?
It is worrying because it shows how nonsensical many Ukrainian officials are.
Russia is demanding sweeping security guarantees that NATO will never let Ukraine join as a member and will end its activities in countries in Eastern Europe that have already joined. America says that is a non-starter, but is prepared to talk about military exercises and missile deployments, leaving a huge gulf between the two sides.
With 100,000 Russian troops on Ukraine's border, there is a lot at stake. Miscalculation or clumsy diplomacy could lead to escalation and conflict.
The buildup that Russia is undertaking right now is leaving them an option to conduct what would be the largest military operation in Europe, maybe since the Second World War.
After 8 hours of discussions, they're still far from any agreement, except to carry on talks when NATO meets Russia on Wednesday, the next chance to reduce tensions and avert conflict.
We have made it clear, and we told the Russians directly again today, that if Russia further invades Ukraine, there will be significant costs and consequences.
The gulf between the United States and Russia appeared as stark as ever Wednesday following a 4-hour NATO meeting in Brussels, where U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman reiterated a warning to Russia over its massing of troops near Ukraine and wondered why the nuclear-armed nation claimed it felt threatened by its much smaller neighbor.
They are a powerful country. The fact that they feel threatened by Ukraine, a smaller and still developing democracy, is hard to understand, quite frankly. Why they need 100,000 troops on the border, which they say are not for invasion but are for exercising, when live fire exercises are reported this morning. What is this about? Is this about invasion? Is this about intimidation? Is this about trying to be subversive? I don't know. But it is not conducive to getting to diplomatic solutions.
NATO said it was willing to talk to Russia about arms control and missile deployments to avert the risk of war in Europe, but would not allow Moscow to veto Ukraine's ambition to join NATO one day. At a lengthy news conference, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Khrushchev said Russia could not take seriously NATO's claim to be a defensive alliance that posed no threat to Russia.
Мы очень честно, прямо
We have honestly, explicitly, and without trying to cut corners using the politically correct forms, pointed out that further deterioration in ties could lead to unpredictable and severe consequences for European security. Russia disagrees with such a scenario.
Afterward, Khrushchev said Moscow would use military means to neutralize security threats if diplomacy proved insufficient. The talks were set to continue on Thursday in Vienna.
In a city that's long mediated between East and West, talks to avert conflict with Russia. The Ukraine crisis dominating a meeting of 57 nations in Vienna, where there was this stark warning the continent's not been this close to conflict since the Cold War.
The risk of war in the OSCE area is now greater than ever before in the last 30 years.
Your Excellency, can we ask how long will you give?
There's been little progress in talks. Russia's demands rejected by the West as unacceptable. Its ambassador here insisting it's NATO that's the aggressor.
And the question is what, for example, United States, United Kingdom and other members of alliance are doing on the territory of Ukraine by military exercises, flying very provocative flights over the zone of responsibility of the Russian Federation.
So we shouldn't be worried by the presence of 100,000 Russian troops on the border with Ukraine?
No.
And yet the head of the OSCE today saying that we're the closest we've been to war for 30 years in Europe.
Well, this is the question to the chairperson in office.
And the NATO Secretary General saying yesterday that there's a real risk of armed conflict in Europe.
That's NATO threatening with this. We are not threatening.
Nothing threatening about 100,000 troops on Ukraine's border.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Russia had said it would give to the end of these meetings to give diplomacy a chance. But before this one was even over, one Russian official after another has been describing the talks as unsuccessful and threatening alternative measures. Moscow is clearly upping the ante, with the week ending pretty much as it began, in deadlock. America is warning conflict is looming, the drumbeat to war increasingly loud. In a week of talks in 3 different cities, no breakthrough, not a glimmer of hope, this crisis is easing.
To hold more talks with the Russians, Jake?
There are no dates set for any more talks. We have to consult with allies and partners first. We're in communication with the Russians, and we'll see what comes next.
Jake, could you address Deputy Foreign Minister's comments, Sergei Ryabkov, suggesting that that Russia can deploy forces or wouldn't rule out deploying forces in Latin America? Is that something that the U.S. is concerned about? Is that something that came up in those discussions?
I'm not going to respond to bluster in the public commentary. That wasn't raised in the discussions at the Strategic Stability Dialogue. If Russia were to move in that direction, we would deal with it decisively.
Ryabkov last month compared current tensions over Ukraine with the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, when the Soviet Union deployed missiles to Cuba and the U.S. imposed a naval blockade around the island. That crisis ended after then U.S. President John F. Kennedy and Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev agreed that Moscow would withdraw its missiles in exchange for Washington's promise not to invade Cuba and remove U.S. missiles from Turkey. Ryabkov's comments may add to speculation that the Caribbean island may be involved in a repeat of the Cuban Missile Crisis.